Facebook wants to eat Craigslist. Amazon is making reviews more honest, a preview of Google's announcements, and Uber is moving to the Burbs. All that and a whole lot more coming up on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1611, recorded Monday, October 3rd, 2016.
This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Blue Apron. Blue Apron will send you fresh, high-quality ingredients to cook delicious meals with simple step-by-step instructions right to your door. See what's on the menu this week and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/twit. That's blueapron.com/twit.
And by Zerto, virtual replication and disaster recovery technology that gives you the confidence to keep your business moving forward no matter what comes your way. Zerto empowers you to protect and recover your IT assets, move to the cloud, and know you're ready for anything. Get a free readiness assessment for your data center at confidentcio.com.
And by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Rocket Mortgage brings the mortgage process into the 21st century with a fast, easy, and completely online process. Check out Rocket Mortgage today at quickenloans.com/TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today. This is a show where we talk about everything you need to know about technology today with people who are passionate about technology. I'm Megan Morrone.
I'm Jason Howell. It was a nice white flash, Brian. Transition. It made me feel like this was an action movie. It went.
I'm impressed you noticed.
We notice everything, Brian. Just you remember that. Yeah, see? I feel like I just got punched. Joining us after a really, maybe I did actually, after a pretty long time. I don't know why we haven't had Becky Worley on in a really long time, but we haven't. And dang it, today we're going to change that. How's it going, Becky?
Thanks for the circle wipe. I would have also taken a heart wipe, so appreciate that.
Do we actually have a heart wipe in the TriCaster?
It's,
I'll work on it.
Okay.
You guys, I'm not drunk, I'm hungover on tech news.
Really?
I hosted Twit yesterday, and then I got up early this morning to do some Facebook news on Good Morning America, and it's like I have a tech news hangover. I've been watching football all day. I haven't gotten out of my Uggs. So just bear with me here. I'm kind of, I'm at that stage where I need some tomato juice.
Okay.
And so we're going to get through this, guys. I'm going to live to see another day.
Maybe you need like a greasy meal to soak up all that tech news so you can feel normal again.
I do. I'm gonna have a burger for dinner. Thanks for that advice.
Yeah, you bet.
All right. Well, how about some more tech news as long as you're soaking that up?
Yeah,
Hair of the dog.
Facebook just launched Marketplace, a way to let users buy and sell their stuff on Facebook. It's coming immediately to the US, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand, and you'll be able to access it on iOS pretty easily. It's taking up some prime real estate where the Messenger icon used to live. Facebook will operate like Craigslist, helping buyers and sellers find each other, but they will not deal with payment or delivery. Facebook says they're just giving us more of what we're asking for, since more than 450 million people visit buy and sell groups each month. And for sure, they'll use this information to sell us more stuff. Of course, Becky, you broke this story on Good Morning America this morning. What are your thoughts on it?
They've tried to do this type of a consumer-to-consumer sales venue before, but not as sort of institutionally as they are now. For the moment, it's only in the app. It's not on the desktop yet, I don't think. But you'll see it has a little icon, like you said, down in the bottom area of the screen. It's amazing how fast it's been populated. I'm looking for a piano keyboard for my daughter to practice her piano with headphones. And it's amazing. Just in the day, I've been going back and seeing how it's populating, and there's been a ton of stuff come up. You mentioned that they won't be doing any of the payment processing, which I think is so interesting because it's such the opportunity to monetize this. But I think they want to build it first and then figure out the payment strategy afterwards. I guess, you can send money to people in Messenger, but I don't think that's what they're intending. So here's my question to you guys. As I've been going through here, I see a piano on someone's site. I see where they live. I can see who they are, and then I can see if they have friends. I can see if they have photos posted, if they haven't made them private. I can see if they have other things listed for sale. Does that context give you a better sense of who the seller is and that this is a real sale as opposed to a totally anonymous Craigslist posting or, a 4-star eBay posting? Does it give you guys more of a sense of that context and safety in the purchase?
Well, for me, that's what they want. They want a friendlier Craigslist. I don't know if it does. I guess Craigslist, Facebook is a place where it's harder to be anonymous. You can get a lot of context around people. I don't know. I haven't gotten it on my app hasn't updated yet, so I don't have it yet. What do you think, Jason?
Well, I feel like Craigslist, when you're dealing with Craigslist, most of the time it feels very anonymous because, many people aren't putting their names on there. You don't know, you don't have a picture for them. You just have the item, a whole wall of text formatted poorly in many cases. And at least here, you get a little bit of a sense of the user behind that, whether that's a good or a bad thing for selling, products in this way. I don't know. I suppose I would feel a little bit better knowing that there's an actual person there. But then again, I don't know. Using Craigslist has its faults, has its downside, but it has so many people and so many users using it that you kind of overlook that bit just based on the fact that its utility is so strong. But if anyone is going to challenge Craigslist in this space, I feel like Facebook has the ability to do that. They've got just the sheer number of users. In our family, we've bought stuff off of Facebook through groups before, so it's not like that's a foreign concept to me. So this is more like making that more of a solid, official presentation. We're probably going to be using it.
Business Insider says that people are already selling drugs, sex, snakes. I saw hamsters. Maybe the hamsters feed the snakes. The snake listing has been removed. I don't know. There's some
What's wrong
live
with selling
animal
snakes? You're not allowed to sell snakes?
I don't know, but it raises the question. There's a lot of policing that's going to have to go with this, which is a lot of human hours. When I asked Facebook about fraud, what happens if someone does report that an item they bought was a fake or not as described, they said that there will be a grievance process that you can file a complaint, that they'll try to adjudicate that, and that if they see a trend or things escalate with one particular seller, that person can be banned from marketplace. But to me, they have to have a monetization strategy because this is a ton of capital expenditure on human resources to police this thing.
Yeah, and I think they're basically saying right now their plan is to not necessarily monetize it, just see if the community jumps on board and how active they get, and then at some point possibly put ads against certain searches through the service and other things, as Facebook is always want to do. So,
well, I think, everyone's going to take advantage of it, as we all do. I think I saw this on Twitter on Friday. I think someone was trying to sell a soul on Amazon. And they actually somehow got it into the Amazon marketplace. I'm trying to look it up now and I don't see it, but I just saw the questions that people were it's the frequently asked questions. It's like, does the body come with the soul? And what do I have to give up to sell it? So yeah, people are going to take advantage of it. But I think of Craigslist as a wonderful idea. And, Craig Newmark was a fantastic man who really believed in what he was doing and believed in something bigger. But he wasn't the kind of person that was really just going to he wasn't Mark Zuckerberg, nor did he want to be. And so, I think, Facebook is going to own this if they want to.
I think it's pretty impressive how well Craigslist has done as long as it has, considering it really has not paid attention to things that so many other sites place high value on. Design of the site, they kept it really simple. Mobile, they don't have any mobile apps. You got to go to third-party apps, and that's one thing that I really hate about Craigslist is that there's no real easy to use, good-looking kind of mobile thing, even though nowadays that's probably how we would post most of our things. Take a picture with a phone, post it. That's so much easier done on a mobile device than it is, let's say, through a website, based on the tools we have now. So there is another big way that Facebook could probably excel over the top of Craigslist.
Craigslist is not for profit, right? Or minimal profit or moderately lefty socialist. What is their deal?
I think that, I'm not exactly sure what it is.
They were for profit. But
moderate profit, I think. I like that. Lefty socialist, moderate profit.
got some weird thing going, but it's working for them.
Versus Facebook's all for profit and not for anything else. We've all witnessed the reviews on Amazon that go something like, this is my honest review of the insert sub-brand product you've never heard of before after being offered this product at no cost to me by the manufacturer, something along those lines. It's been a strangely open policy that Amazon has allowed for some time now that people can review products given to them by the manufacturer as long as they state it in the review and promise to be honest and objective. Of course, I would say 99 out of 100 times those reviews are glowingly positive. I wonder why. Well, Amazon is finally sealing this shut by updating its community guidelines to remove incentivized reviews. The only exception, the one exception that they have, will be Amazon's Vine program, where Amazon itself takes part in identifying who the trusted reviewer is. So they kind of, Amazon takes that into their own hands and says this person can be trusted based on a number of pieces of information behind the scene. Amazon has fought compensation for reviews, but somehow has allowed for this for quite a while. So I'm really happy to see this closed up.
If you back this out, what we're really talking about is payola.
Yeah.
And this was something that started, back in the days of LPs and disc jockeys, where DJs would play songs if they were paid to play them. And the FCC has a deal where it basically says, if you're a broadcast licensee, you cannot receive pay for play unless you disclose it, blah, 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 blah. So none of those rules apply on the internet. It's very caveat emptor. And I think Amazon really takes this stuff seriously. I've talked with their folks a lot about fake reviews and the efforts they go to remove those false reviews. And it really is to their benefit to limit the amount of fluffery that goes on around describing products by people who have a vested interest. So a couple of thoughts. The Vine program you mentioned, Jason, in their terms of the Vine service, Amazon sends the product to the reviewers and the manufacturer or the retailer has nothing to do with that person. And I think that's a really important distinction.
Sure.
I don't know if you guys have ever had this experience where you go out on the street and you're interviewing people for a story or whatever. People genuinely want to say positive things.
Yes.
And whenever I try and do like product tests on the street, everybody's like glowing. I don't know if they think this is some Blue Blockers ad that they're going to get paid for afterwards. But it's amazing to me how much people skew towards positive because they don't want to hurt my feelings. They feel pressured because they have a relationship with the person who's asking them about the product. And I wonder if this comes through in this Amazon reviews things. Even when people are trying to be unbiased, they showed a real statistical anomaly where they were much more positive than negative.
I agree. I think, well, first of all, this doesn't cover books. So books are still outside of this. Books, you can still send books to people and they can review them. That's outside of this program. And I think that makes sense because I think this came from when Amazon just sold books. That's what they did. And that's what we've always done with books. Book reviewers get advanced copies of books and then they review them and they write about them. And that's how book reviewing works. But now Amazon came along and it's like everybody can write a review no matter who you are. And so that fell apart a little bit. And then you get these people who are not professionals and they say like, hey, it's not like you're saying, they're not wanting to do evil. It's like they have a relationship. Well, I like books, send me books and I'm going to review them. And I'll probably say something good about them so that you send me more books or because I have a relationship with you. That's why the Vine program is so great because they don't get to talk. If you're a reviewer, you don't get to talk to the people that are sending. It's all third party. And I think that really makes sense. And I think that it makes sense. I'm glad they're doing this.
Yeah. A web retailer study of 7 million Amazon reviews showed incentivized reviewers were 4 times less likely to leave critical reviews, based on their study. And I completely agree with what you were saying, Becky. I feel like the star rating thing, stars, even when you limit it to just 4 stars, let's say, and it, kind of makes sense. 1 star is horrible, 4 stars great, and there isn't a whole lot of variability in between there. People still have different thresholds for things. And that's probably why so often when you go online, you see these reviews, whatever the reviews base is, it's always on that like upper third-ish, right around there, 7 out of 10 or or 8 out of 10, pretty good, even if it really just kind of sucked. People have a hard time giving a 3 on something that sucked. They'll give a 1 if it was the worst thing they've ever, seen or had or anything like that. But that it's like the range on the lower scale and the mid scale just gets lost. It's like either all the way up there or way down there. Period.
Okay, you know that little thing on the reviews where it shows like there are this many 4-star reviews and there are this many 2-star reviews. Which number of stars do you click on first, Megan and Jason, when you want to read a review? Do you read the 2-star reviews, the 4-star? What do you read? The highs, the middles, or the lows?
Lows. Always.
The lows are pretty revealing. That's for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah,
I usually read the lows, and I don't buy products based on Amazon reviews. Period. I use the Wirecutter. Like I love that source, and Sweet Home. They are great, unbiased reviews. They don't make money off of. They have Amazon referral links. That's how they make money. But it's like they don't recommend stuff. They just want to write more reviews, so they want to post things. That's their bias.
Right.
And I like Consumer Reports and CNET.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Definitely.
Yep. Well, Fast Company says a new Google-backed startup will use computer-based cognitive therapy, advanced data mapping, and more to help diagnose and offer affordable care for anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. Quartet has already formed 2 partnerships with Blue Cross and other insurance companies to equip primary care providers with behavioral health resources and to simplify tech-enabled behavioral health support, including telepsychiatry. So, Becky, what do you think about this online psychiatry, telepsychiatry, teletherapy?
Getting a good shrink is at a crisis point, at least here in the Bay Area, where we have probably the highest penetration of therapists in the country because there's so much dysfunction between the insurance companies and the therapists. And I would say this mostly falls on the insurance company's fault. There was an amazing report done by KQED, our local NPR station here in the Bay, where they talked about the fact that reimbursement rates from insurance companies don't provide living wages if you're an in-network provider. So they'll pay a therapist $60 to $80 per session. Now, a session, an hour. Then you got to do a half an hour or 45 minutes of paperwork afterwards if you're going to get reimbursed by the insurance company. So we're talking about $30 an hour for a therapist. The market rate for therapy is more like $150 to $200. So we've got a broken system. It's perfect for disintermediation. Then there's the issue of you're bearing your soul to a computer. I think it might work for some people. It might be more convenient. It might be a way for therapists to line up a whole day of 8 back to back to back to back, and all the paperwork is done in a automated system that's tied to the person's record, so there's less logistical paperwork and filing. But I think this is something worth investigating, and I have some skepticism too. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, I think this was actually Google's, or at least Google Ventures' first investment in this particular area, tackling kind of the psychological aspect of the medical industry. And really what they're trying to do here, at least their kind of overarching goal, is just the thought, the idea that behavioral and physical health and psychological health, it's all so incredibly siloed right now and off on its own. Often psychological or mental illness has an associated physical kind of symptom that is attached to it, but that might be missed along the way. And so apparently with the kind of algorithms and the computer work that they have going on behind the scenes here, it is possible to kind of help to connect those dots for the doctors, so that maybe this is a clue that zeroes in on this other diagnosis that would have been missed otherwise. I mean, how could you say that's a bad idea? That's great. And this is kind of the awesomeness of companies like Google being able to use these venture kind of capital parts of their business to fund things that need rethinking, and the healthcare industry has long needed rethinking. So
yeah, I mean, the health insurance companies are getting into this because it's the law. There's a health parity law that says, insurers have to provide the same level of physical care as they would mental care, and they're not right now. I mean, Quartet has some really interesting statistics. There's 143,000 daily ER visits due to underlying behavioral illness. 26 million Americans will not receive the behavioral health care that they need annually. So I do think, there's so many ways that technology can help this, can disrupt it. it, I guess, for lack of a better word. And especially with cognitive behavioral therapy, that's what they're talking about. Like being able to do that. That's a way that's a therapy that works with some people. It doesn't work with other people, but it is very rote. It's like here, you can fill a form out online. Like here's your feeling. Do this, do this, do this. It's something that could help some people in a much cheaper way than sitting down, with a therapist that's willing to take $30 an hour or whatever, when they could be getting paid $200 an hour from someone somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys? This is sort of tangential, but I can't remember what app it was that I put on my phone, but about once every 2 or 3 days, it would just send a notification to my phone that said, "How you doing?" It was bizarrely comforting.
Yeah. I have tried those too. It's just like, yeah, how are you? Or the Apple Watch. I don't know if you've updated to WatchOS 3, Becky.
No.
But, it has the Breathe app that just, reminds you, stand up every hour, reminds you to breathe every hour. Of course, like deep breathing, not
There's
just...
something wrong with my mic. Sorry.
Maybe this is where we're headed,
breathing.
right? Through the use of artificial intelligence, because that's the key word this year, as well as, thought of stuff like this, like what we're talking about here, tied in with our voice assistants. Maybe someday our psychologist, our therapist, is going to be Cortana, or it's going to be whatever we have powered back here. I mean, certainly at some point, I don't necessarily think that's a great idea, but maybe it actually is. Maybe at some point it becomes the kind of thing where this could be the voice that people can talk to that they wouldn't normally talk to and learn something about themselves that they need to learn. I don't know.
Hopefully,
you think about it. Yeah, well, so much of therapy is asking questions of people and asking them to really peel the onion. So maybe you're right. If it's an interrogative sort of AI, that could be interesting.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Apple. You too, Motorola in the back there. Now we live in a world where phones may or may not feature a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack replaced by a special connector or a dongle. And to further illustrate...
That's courage, Jason. That's courage. That's courage.
Oh, I'm sorry. These phones are filled with courage, filled to the brim with courage, if that's what you want to call it. To further illustrate this, that this new world order is in fact about to get a lot of more of support, the USB Implementers Forum published its USB audio device class 3.0 spec. That's standardizing the transmission of audio over USB-C, so even more hardware makers can jettison the headphone jack in place of the data port. Within the spec is listed a number of features that going all in on digital for audio brings to a device. So I'm just kind of like wondering if I'm quickly becoming the get off my lawn guy when it comes to audio jacks. Although, I don't know, like I find myself torn here. And now, Megan, you have the new iPhone that has no headphone jack. Becky, do you?
No.
So you're still headphone jack full?
Oh, yes, because I finally have like 10 pairs of 3.5 millimeter earphones. I've only now just stocked up.
Finally, after all these years.
Apple gives you a dongle.
Yeah, dongle my
dongle. So how do you feel? Do you feel like the dongle is a sufficient replacement?
I haven't used the dongle at all. And mostly the one time I had use for it, I forgot it at home.
See?
Oh.
But I may do. I just listened with the speakers because they're loud enough. But yeah, I think so long headphone jack. Don't let the door hit you.
Now, I remember when you first heard the news, though, you were bummed.
I was.
So, you had mentioned it. You definited brought it up a couple of times, like at least some disappointment with the headphone jack.
I know.
What changed?
That's good therapy. What changed? I just realized that I don't need it.
Yeah, because you're very used to already listening to Bluetooth,
Bluetooth headphones
and stuff like that.
Well, because Bluetooth headphones, I've been running with my phone, and Bluetooth headphones are much better for running and exercising. So it wasn't like I was preparing for the lack of the headphone jack.
Right.
I just liked it. But I'm also not an audiophile like yourself. So...
Yeah. See, I find myself kind of torn as I'm like reading through these specs. So just to give you a sense of like what this actually means for USB-C. Spec includes support for low latency audio throughput. So that's fine. Analog audio is basically no latency. So there you go. Active noise cancellation, echo canceling, equalization, automatic gain control for microphones. This is all built into the technology underneath. So this wouldn't be stuff that would have to be factored in extra in the phone as they kind of do already. Volume control, also support for the latest compressed formats to pass through. It's more power efficient. It allows for more compact designs. I don't know. Like, I find myself like at this weird little crossroads where I'm like, I don't want to give it up because I'm so used to having it. But then at the same time, I don't want to be a naysayer for new technology just because it's always been that way. You know, I don't know. How do you feel, Becky?
Mophie came out with their iPhone 7 case today, and of course it has the backup power battery built into it. But I thought that it was a real opportunity for them to put a 3.5 millimeter jack in and create some sort of conversion through the case, and they didn't do it. So I think there is a general sense that, especially when you talk about, you have to make sacrifices ultimately for power efficiency and processing efficiency, and we. You know, I think as hardware makers squeeze blood from the stone, trying to get that efficiency higher and higher and the product smaller and thinner and battery life longer, there's going to be something where we do eventually feel it. And I think this is the one that's hitting, and you're like, yeah, okay, we got to change. Change is hard. Who moved my cheese?
But who knows? Maybe 2 years from now, when it's all we have, if that ends up being the case, or 5 years from now when it's all we have, maybe it won't matter because maybe it will make room for other kind of and enjoyable ways that we couldn't have used that 3.5 millimeter jack. So
Right, and you wouldn't want to eat that cheese at this point anyway.
No, move it out of the room. Move that cheese out of the room. It's cool.
Microsoft is officially getting out of the fitness tracker business. The company confirmed to Paul Thurrott today that there will be no more versions of the Microsoft Band. So no Band 3. The Band 2 has officially been removed from the Microsoft store. And if you have one, they're going to come to your house and tear it off your wrist.
Oh.
Just kidding. They're not going to do that. They're not going to tear it off your wrist. Becky, what are your thoughts on the fitness wearable space right now?
Yeah, it seems like it's consolidating, doesn't it? You see the hardcore folks wearing the Garmin's, people who want a dedicated device wearing Fitbits. Some of the other devices that were experiments, you can see from these bigger companies where it's not their bread and butter, they'll probably realize they're just never going to make a profit on this. This isn't their thing, and they're going to get out. I find that's why I wear the Apple Watch. It's the fitness tracker that I like the best. And so I think we're going to see more of this consolidation.
I agree.
Yeah, you mentioned Apple Watch. It's very interesting timing considering the fact that with the Apple Watch 2, they really showed that Apple is doubling down on kind of the killer feature that Apple sees. Otherwise, they wouldn't have doubled down on it, which is fitness. So, it probably goes beyond just the fact that this was a fitness band and it didn't, that probably had less to do with it. It might be the hardware behind it. It might be the support for, or lack of support for Microsoft's health service, just kind of in comparison with the competition. I don't know if I really heard many people talking about the band versus the Fitbit or, now the Apple Watch. So could just
also,
be
I just
lack of
feel
awareness.
like, yeah. And also, Jason, as you say that, it makes me realize I don't think that wearables have been the extension of the OS that everyone thought they would be. And maybe that's just that first-gen products are going to moderately suck. But, I find that a lot of the stuff that happens with my Apple Watch in terms of notifications, emails, messages, the latency from my phone it makes it ineffective because I'm going to check my phone. Do you guys have that where it just doesn't seem like it updates fast enough?
Well, you got to get the new OS. You got to upgrade to Watch OS 3. You don't have to buy a new one, but it is much faster.
Okay.
It's much faster. And when I reinstalled, I just took a lot of, I don't try to check Twitter on there. I don't try to respond to emails. But for notifications, I think that, I have no trouble now. It's much better than it was.
Yeah, it just hasn't changed my life at the level that I felt like the promise and the hype was there for. I do love the fitness stuff, great, and occasional use of the OS extension, but I'll do the upgrade. I'll see.
All right, up next, we're going to chat about what to expect during tomorrow morning's Google hardware event. Got a few things to look forward to, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. But first, let's take a minute to thank Blue Apron. They are the sponsor of this episode. Blue Apron's mission is to make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone, also supporting a more sustainable food system, setting the highest standards for ingredients, and building a community of home chefs. Blue Apron delivers seasonal recipes along with fresh, high-quality ingredients to make delicious home-cooked meals. Every meal comes with a step-by-step, easy-to-follow recipe card, pre-portioned ingredients that can be prepared in 40 minutes or less. You're going to save time and money. If you're shopping at the grocery store, this is 60% more expensive than Blue Apron when you do that. If you spend a lot eating out or you're at high-end grocery chains, well, now you can spend under $10 per person for healthy home-cooked meals. Customize your recipes every week based on your dietary preferences and choose a delivery option that fits your needs. There's no weekly commitments, so you only get deliveries when you want them. Blue Apron delivers to 99% of the continental U.S. Blue Apron sets the highest quality standards for their community. They have over 150 local farms, fisheries, and ranchers across the U.S. Seafood is sourced sustainably, beef is raised humanely, chickens are free range, pork is raised naturally, and regenerative farming practices are used for produce. By shipping the exact amount required for the recipe, Blue Apron is reducing food waste. Whether it's Japanese ramen noodles, wild-caught Alaskan salmon, or heirloom tomatoes, Blue Apron brings you the best. Blue Apron actually not only supports a more sustainable food system, it supports happy and healthy families, meaning that you cook together, you're going to build strong family bonds. Research shows that Blue Apron families cook nearly 3 times more often. New recipes are created every week by Blue Apron's culinary team. They're not repeated within the year, so you can get crispy chicken Milanese with warm Brussels sprouts, celery, and potato salad. You've got Thai green curry chicken and squash with yu choy, jasmine rice and cashews, roasted pork steamed buns with black garlic mayonnaise and spicy cabbage slaw, or even seared salmon and fall vegetable hash with apple brown butter dressing. All that and more. If you salivated at all, then you'll want to check this out for this week's menu. And you can also get your first 3 meals free with free shipping. All you have to do is go to blueapron.com/twit. You're going to love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron. So don't wait. Visit blueapron.com/twit. And we thank Blue Apron for their support of Tech News Today. All right, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, Google will begin its live stream of a hardware announcement that Android head Hiroshi Lockheimer has said on Twitter will be, at least alluded to it being as significant, if not more significant, than the launch of Android 8 years ago. Could be overstating it to get excitement high. That's kind of his job, right? But I don't know. Should we kind of take a look and see what we think? Do we agree with Hiroshi?
Whoa. Wait a second. We're gonna turn the tables right now.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna do something. You, Jason Howell,
yes,
are now the interview subject.
Ah, dang it.
You're going to take a brief break from being the host of the show because I think Megan and I want to interview your Android-loving self.
Fine. Bring it.
Who's going to go first?
Bring it. Yeah,
I don't know.
who's going first?
Are you going to play Terry Gross or am I Martha Raddatz? What are we doing here, Megan?
Both. You know who Martha Raddatz is now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, yes.
Okay, good. Okay. All right. Okay, Jason, lightning round. What are we expecting in phone hardware?
Phone hardware, we've got the Pixel phones, basically. New brand. Thank you for the white flash. New branding. So that would be Pixel, not Nexus this time around. 2 sizes. You've got the regular size and the XL size. I think the XL is like 5.7 inches. The other one's 5.2. Could be a little wrong on that. Android 7.1. So a new version of Android Nougat would be shipping on that. Premium specs. If we see the Snapdragon 821 on here, which is rumored to be the case, I think this would be the first phone with that SoC. 4 gigs of RAM, Quad HD display on the larger one, fingerprint. Basically all through and through premium design, premium pricing, which is very different from what Google's done in the past.
Right, the price is no joke. $650, right?
$650 to start. So I'm guessing that is for the smaller Pixel device, which, then you take the Pixel XL. They're more approaching kind of like the Galaxy or the iPhone kind of pricing, definitely on the premium side, if the rumors are to be believed.
So why do they keep saying made by Google when it's just like an HTC phone? Like, why are they doing that? Why are they saying that?
Well, that's one thing that I feel a little strange about, that they would come out with their campaign and say made by Google when all the reports indicate that this is a phone made by HTC underneath. I don't know if this matches, like, made by Google, if that is to mean, I don't know. I always thought that made by Google was, what you see out of like the Pixel. It's a very specific design approach, or the Pixel C follows the Pixel's design approach, has that kind of like straight edges, aluminum kind of thing. I always saw that as Google's kind of in-house design aesthetic. We've seen leaks of these phones, so maybe they kind of fit that once we see the officials, and we've seen leaks here and there, and I guess so. It looks nice. It's just I feel like it's a little disingenuous to say made by Google when it's actually kind of partially HTC underneath the hood. Maybe that's a look into the future, and maybe their plan is to ultimately kind of take that over entirely.
Google's branding and marketing is so schizophrenic that it, as a consumer, I just find it wickedly confusing. But I think what is obvious here is that this is not a Nexus phone. Right. Why is this not a reference design Nexus branded phone?
Well, I think Google's kind of changed. I mean, obviously they've changed their marketing positioning for this, and we're going to see a lot of that tomorrow. They went through to great lengths to promote tomorrow's event and tomorrow's unveiling in a lot of like traditionally consumer places like Times Square and all these other things. Whereas normally it would, if it was a Nexus event, like maybe last year they touted the 6P in different places, but this time around, they're going to be targeting carriers. They're going to be targeting regular consumers. Instead of having Nexus branding, it's going to have a recognizable G that says Google, that basically alludes to the Google logo on the back. So I think they're really just trying to get a little bit more control over their own devices and not be as seen as like, well, we create devices that are reference hardware for manufacturers and developers like to use our devices. They want to move beyond that. I think Google is starting to want to be seen on the same playing field in the hardware world as companies like Apple and Samsung, and that's a big part of it.
But is that for their own marketing, branding, and profit, or is that to pressure other manufacturers in staying more with a clean version of Android?
I'm not sure that this has anything to do with pressuring anyone else. I actually think that this kind of goes counter to that. I feel like right now what we're about to see is Google saying, you know what? All this time we were worried about offending our hardware partners, our Android partners, because we didn't want to make something too great that would make them upset, that we were trying to oust them or trying to overshadow their efforts. And now I think Google's kind of saying Android's built out strong enough that they can exist, but then so can we, and we can do great things too. And I don't know, I think a part of them, there's a bone inside their body now where they're like, if this ruffles some feathers, whatever. We need to have a strong showing, consumer showing in hardware, and we're going to do that now. We aren't afraid to do it.
They couldn't have gotten the timing better, because with Samsung hobbled, they can kick them in the jimmy and not worry about retaliation,
Yeah. Well, and Samsung's so entirely built around Android, even though they've tried with, with Tizen and everything, but kind of keeps coming back. So yes, they could kick them in the jimmy and they'll keep crawling back.
Well, what about Daydream? What about the VR headset? It's going to be, rumors say $79, which is, the Gear VR is $99. Are undercutting them as well there. What do you think of that?
I'm really excited to see it. So Daydream, when they announced this at Google I/O, it was more they were announcing that Daydream VR is built into Android, so on supported handsets, which these devices are expected to be. They better be. You don't come out with your flagship device and have it not support the new, flagship feature of your OS. So it will be. But the Daydream spec was really a spec for other hardware manufacturers to get in and create headsets that would work, be it from the hand controller to the head-mounted thing. And now, of course, the rumor that you're talking about from Variety says that Google's going to show off a headset. I'm not sure if it's Google's hardware or if it's in partnership with somebody else, but I mean, if this is the Made by Google event, I'm guessing it might be theirs, and I'm very excited to see it. $79 undercuts the Gear VR by $20, so it's a good price. Hopefully, it's a good quality headset.
And finally, with Andromeda, it's sort of like you put your Chrome OS in my peanut butter, or you put your Android on my chocolate. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can you explain what the thinking is here?
Well, so we've been hearing about this for a few years now, right? That and really came to a head last year about this time when the Wall Street Journal published a report saying that Google was in fact working on an OS that would take the best parts of Chrome OS and the best parts of Android and smash them up into one. Then at I/O earlier this year, they unveiled that Chrome OS could run Android apps, could run the Play Store. And so it was kind of like, oh, well, was that what the Wall Street Journal was talking about? But really what this is about is from what we've heard anyways, and we don't really know a whole lot about it, but the expectation is that Andromeda would be this kind of like converged OS, and it would be, as far as I can tell, it would be the new phase of Android. So it wouldn't just be a certain select group. I'm thinking that by next year, when we supposedly see it, this is Android going forward. It's this converged OS. Otherwise, talk about fragmentation. Now you've got two different versions of Android OS out there, and I don't think Google would do that at this point. They've learned that lesson, I hope. But yeah, it would just kind of take, maybe they would tackle the update issues that Android is known for. Chrome OS is historically an amazing update platform. An update comes through, you don't even know it's there until you see a little button down in the corner and you tap that, and when it restarts, you've got the update. It just happened behind the scenes. Maybe that can be integrated into Android, and they can kind of figure out a way around this like horrible update nightmare that is the case now, and also just allowing Android to kind of compete in a new form factor against OSs like Windows and Mac OS. It's really, from what we're looking and reading, is meant to kind of be another desktop, let's say, class computing platform. And so, yeah, Android everywhere, but with steroids, I guess. Does that answer your question, Becky?
Hey, Jason Howell, thanks for joining us on Tech News today. Where can people find your work?
About.me/Jason Howell, or tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific here on Twit. I'll be here with Ron Richards and Stacey Higginbotham, and we'll be covering the event live, twit.tv/live.
I'll be sure to tune in.
Thank you. Wow, that was so weird. Getting interviewed is weird.
Well, Jennifer Knock writes, I've been listening to Twit quite a bit lately, and I keep hearing about the removal of the headphone jack from the new phone. What I don't seem to be hearing about is the other thing that Apple removed, specifically the iPad 3 and iPhone 4 no longer being able to get software upgrades. We are a family who likes to use our devices as long as reasonably possible. Our iPhone 4s have been passed down, and I'm still using an iPad 3. Are we the only ones using older devices? It's true, we haven't talked about this. Yeah, the iPad Mini 2 is the oldest device you can run iOS 10 on. You can run it on the first generation iPad Air, the fourth generation iPad, and of course the iPad Pros. But it's true, like we hand down devices, and it's especially when you're talking about iPads that don't get like necessarily like daily in your pocket use all the time. They should be able to be. I mean, you can still use it. You just can't have any of the fancy stuff. Do you hand down devices, Becky?
Totally. And I think there's two sides of this coin. So as a consumer reporter, I think you should get as much life out of a purchase that you make as you possibly can. The problem is it's not just about the operating system. It's also about the apps that are being updated. And I mean, this was a real issue in my family because one of my twins, which are supposed to get everything the same, right? That's what they think. One has the phone for the plane that can play Plants vs. Zombies, and the other one is too old to support the new versions of Plants vs. Zombies. So you see the conflict that arises here.
They're going to definitely need that online therapy in their future.
That's right, other mother of twins. This is major. And so, I see basically the problem is that you start running into a cascade of app problems as these devices age. And I think you have to decide what you can do with them to help them keep their longevity. So like an iPad that we had, I gave to my mom to replace her Kindle. And so she only uses it as a Kindle. And we have other devices that we only use for, I don't know. It's getting limited. It used to be for music, and then Apple Music moved on, and we couldn't use it for that anymore. So I see it both ways.
Mm-hmm. Well, after the break, BuzzFeed's Priya Anand tells us how they paved paradise, but instead of putting in a parking lot, they paid people to ride Uber. But first, let's take a minute to thank Zerto, the sponsor of this episode. Zerto is IT, asset protection, disaster recovery, and cloud continuity for confident CIOs. Confidence can make or break businesses in today's IT world. It can mean the difference between hesitation and action, success or irrelevance. Zerto's cloud-based business continuity solutions arm today's CIOs and IT pros with the confidence to know their systems are ready for anything. With Zerto, you can recover from downtime, test new technology, and move to the cloud, all while maintaining business continuity. Zerto's virtual replication technology gives you the power to simplify your migrations, switch to new infrastructure faster, and get quicker ROI in a matter of clicks. Know your data is protected by breakthrough hypervisor-based software that puts the power of continuous replication at your fingertips. You can migrate to the cloud with no disruptions with enterprise-class software that empowers you to seamlessly and safely move between virtualized workloads, between public, private, and hybrid clouds. Get complete comprehensive data protection in one smart solution for BCDR across storage and hypervisors. Recover from any disruption with checkpoints every 2 seconds. Protect and recover files, VMs, and applications from any point in time. See for yourself how Zerto simplifies your data replication and disaster recovery. Plus, get a free readiness assessment for your data center at confidencecio.com. That's confidencecio.com, and we thank Zerto for their support. A commuter town in New Jersey was going to build a $10 million parking lot, but instead they decided to pay for commuters to take Uber instead. Joining us to talk about this plan is Priya Anand, reporter at BuzzFeed News. Welcome, Priya.
Thanks for having me.
So you write that Summit, New Jersey has a parking problem at their train station. Tell us about this new plan to subsidize Uber rides.
They do, and it pretty much goes the way you would expect any commuter train situation to go, right? You go to the parking lot, you try to find a spot, it takes forever, you circle around, you spend 15, 20 minutes looking for parking. This happens in most highly populated, dense areas. In Summit, New Jersey, a city administrator came in and he said, you know what, I need a more short-term solution than building a parking lot, which would cost multiple millions of dollars depending on how you do it and where you find the land and where you put it at the end of the day. And also it's a pretty long-term solution, right? People will still have to wait for that thing to be built. So he ended up saying, look, let me call Uber, let me talk to Uber's New Jersey office and see if we can work something out where people can maybe take rideshare to get to the train station so they don't have to go park their cars in a lot and have the cars sit all day. They ended up working on a contract program that cost about the same amount as parking would in Summit for a day, about $4 or $2 each way. If you've already paid for parking and you opted to the pilot program, you can take Uber for free. If not, you can pay the equivalent amount of parking that you would pay to park, and Summit will cover the rest of the amount and pay Uber. They'll cut them a check instead. So the drivers will get the same full fare that they would otherwise if it's a $6 ride. Residents, they won't pay any more than they would to park their cars.
So you say that, people that live in big cities are really familiar with Uber. They use it a lot, but, only 15% of Americans have used anything like this, ride hailing, I think ride hailing. Is this the way that they're going to that Uber is trying to get into the suburbs?
Uber has several partnerships sort of similar to this one. This one's slightly different in nature because it's replacing parking, and that's the goal. Usually their partnerships with local agencies are intended to increase ridership of public transportation, right? So when Los Angeles opened up this new Expo line, it's a new line in their train station that goes down to, I believe, Santa Monica. When they opened that up, Uber had a partnership where they did, certain promotional fares to help increase ridership of that. And that's how a lot of their partnerships work. Usually the agency that's subsidizing wants to make it such that people are more encouraged to take that local rail station. Now this one instead is to alleviate parking congestion. This does show how Uber can create a bigger market in the suburbs for itself, right? Because when you're in a less dense area, once you get out of the New Jerseys and New Yorks, maybe the San Franciscos, you get into places where people do have cars that they use on a day-to-day basis, and you get outside of those markets where Uber and Lyft have totally just saturated the game. So once you get into those other markets, there needs to be some sort of incentive, right? If people are sitting there and they have cars in their driveway anyway, and it's like, do I take my car that has all my stuff in it already to go do whatever thing I have to do, to go to the train station or whatever it may be, or go get groceries, or do I use Uber or Lyft? Adding promotions does incentivize that, right? If people know that it's not that expensive to use an alternative, they might be willing to consider it at some point. In this case, they're trying to, with the town of Summit, the city of Summit in New Jersey, they're trying to incentivize it even further. So it's not just, making it cheaper. It's, okay, this is the same amount as parking and your car is just going to sit in a lot otherwise. So if someone else in your family wants to use your car, well, now they can potentially. If you're in Summit, it's a pretty suburban area. So if you have kids, maybe your kid in high school can use your car and drive it instead of you if your car isn't sitting at the train station anymore.
This sounded sort of insane when I first read it, thinking that a parking garage, which is a one-time expenditure for a municipality, seems like a logical choice, and that you couldn't possibly afford to subsidize Uber services for your entire community. But then some of the math that you put out there was really compelling. I mean, it was less than $200,000 a year that this would end up costing the town. You amortize that compared to the $10 million parking structure, and they could do this for 50 years. Transportation's going to change in that time, so this might be a more flexible solution. Do you think that from the nuts and bolts, dollars and cents perspective, this is replicable in other areas?
I don't know if I can really hypothesize how other areas will feel because it depends on how big your town is too, right? And the reason why the rides can be so cheap in Summit, the reason why the city can afford to say we're going to subsidize this and have it still be something that makes sense at the end of the day is because they probably aren't going to be spending so much money cutting Uber the rest of the checks that they are cutting them to make up for the fact that they're subsidizing for their residents, because Summit's 6 square miles. Not every place is 6 square miles and can do something like this, right? So that's a factor. What's also a factor is they're starting off with a 6-month pilot program for about 100 people. They're capping it at 100. Then they'll evaluate and see if they want to continue this. And yes, this is many years worth of savings at the end of the day, right? If you map out less than $200,000 versus the multiple millions it'll cost you to build a parking structure, because what they told me is, look, if we were to build a parking structure, we wouldn't build it for just 100 or so spots near the train station, right? That's crazy. We'd build a bigger one that would probably be more in the ballpark of $10 million. If they were to build a smaller structure, sure, it would be $3 to $4 million. They were like, look, if you're going to build something at the end of the day, you account for the fact that your need could increase later and you build a bigger space that would probably cost about $10 million. Then when you factor that out, it is cheaper to subsidize Uber right now. That said, devil's advocate, some city planners or transportation planners might say, yes, but at the end of the day, making some kind of big capital expenditure is an investment that you make one time and then you're one and done. In Summit's case, though, like you said, if you compare 200,000 to 10 million potentially, it's not just a completely short-term solution, right? They're not saving money for just the first 2, 3, 4 years. They're saving money for quite a little bit of time here. So that was the case that they put on the table. And they said, look, this is much cheaper for us. If we can make this work, let's see how it works out. Technology is changing so much these days. People are talking about all new kinds of transportation with potentially more and more automated vehicles. So for Summit, they found this to be a compelling solution for them.
I mean, is there an associated risk by doing this? I mean, it's a pilot program. Mm-hmm. So, obviously their alternative was, let's create this solution that's going to last for however long into the future. Instead, they're kind of putting their faith into Uber to try this pilot program. What happens if it goes away?
Well, I mean, they have a 6-month contract in this situation, right? Mm-hmm. In this situation, they do have a 6-month contract. I wrote last month about people in Los Angeles who have been ditching their cars, giving up leases, selling their cars in order to just ride hail, Uber and Lyft all the time. They're taking Uber Pool, they're taking Lyft Line. Talked to a pretty substantive number of people who said they're doing this, and it's a growing phenomenon there. In that scenario, there is a little bit more risk, right? Mm-hmm. Because both companies have price wars with each other in most major cities, at least for certain periods of time, right? New York City, I remember at the start of this summer, for about 3 or 4 weeks straight, Uber and Lyft were just completely in price wars with each other, giving promotion after promotion until, one stopped and then the other finally stopped too. Now, in a case where you have a 6-month contract with the city already, and there is this guarantee that fares will be $2 each way for the commuters or $4 in total, same thing as parking there, then there's slightly less risk. That said, there are a whole host of other issues that come along with privatizing a service like this, right? Everyone brings up the labor issue the moment you start talking about Uber, right? BuzzFeed News reported a few months back, a colleague of mine, Caroline O'Donovan, got leaked documents and wrote a very in-depth story about how in some cases the amount of money Uber drivers make is equivalent to what people make working at Walmart or is less than that. And that brings up a whole host of issues, right? When you're hiring drivers on the government level, those are usually, solid jobs that people consider reliable. And when you take that away and you put things in the hands of a private company, you do leave things open to, a private company and whatever the private company decides to do. Uber says their employees, they classify them as independent contractors, so they don't get the same benefits as full-time workers. But that said, this is a contract program where for the residents, at least, this is pretty much locked in for the next 6 months.
Well, it seems to me that, Uber's long-term goal is probably is autonomous cars. So, I think it sounds to me like this is a real way to get autonomous vehicles into the suburbs. To really, because when we think about autonomous cars, we think the city of the future. We think, New York, San Francisco, there's all these robot cars driving around. But what about us in the suburbs? We're still probably going to need to get to places like the train station. But do you think that, was it during your research, do you think that that is really their goal here?
Well, right now they only have their pilot program with autonomous vehicles in Pittsburgh. Uber's put a couple of Ford Fusions on the road there. They plan to have 100 cars on the road there in Pittsburgh that are autonomous, if you could call them that, by the end of the year. Now, that autonomous pilot even comes with a big caveat, right? For now, at least, these cars are not fully autonomous. There's always a test driver behind the wheel, and then there's also an engineer next to that person. So there's not just a pilot, but there's a co-pilot in case something goes wrong. Vehicles won't be fully autonomous for quite some time, right? Most people are estimating that in 5 years, there will be a lot more pilot programs. More common people will be able to test them out and see what it's like and start to get acclimated. That said, we're a long ways away from fully autonomous vehicles.
That's true.
They are just now starting to hit the ground in terms of testing. So by the time they're actually fully out there and, we're in like the Jetsons world where it's not flying cars, but it's autonomous vehicles, that time period is still many, many years away, potentially multiple decades away. And so, yes, while this kind of case study in Summit, where there's a commuter pilot program to take Uber instead of taking your own car to the train station and then hopping on the train, that certainly does make you imagine that there could be a model for autonomous vehicles to do this in the future, right? In fact, that's probably one of the ideal scenarios people would give you, that an autonomous vehicle will take you to the train station or any other sort of public transportation, so then you can get on there and then take your, light rail to wherever you have to go. It presents a case study for that to be feasible in the future in the suburbs, but we're nowhere near the reality for that even happening. It's not like I would even be willing to say, Mom, don't buy a new car. You might be able to take an autonomous Uber in a couple of years. We're very far from that being reality. This isn't a factor really in most people's car buying situation these days.
You're crushing my dreams, sadly.
Sorry. Gotta be in with reality, right?
Yeah. Well, one thing reading your story was notable to me is how technology is really catching up to the way society is changing. When I think of these commuter towns, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, people weren't parking in those parking lots. Their wives were driving them to the train station and picking them up in the afternoon because that's all they had to do, while they were like drinking gin on the couch for the rest of the day. But really, we're not doing that anymore as women. Where, and many times, many women, they were never doing that. But really, we live in a society where people are going to work and they're not driving. And now it seems like Uber is picking up the slack there. Like they'll drive you, they'll be the wife at home. What do you think of that?
I do think when you look at a population like Summit, it's a relatively affluent place. It's a bedroom community in New York. When you get to bedroom communities of major cities, you do get to homes that have multi-car garages, right? Where people are taking husbands and wives, each have their own car. Sometimes the kid has a car. You're taking your car to work. There are multi-car garages and bigger homes for this purpose, right? That's the lifestyle really once you get out of major cities. And this could portend some sort of lifestyle shift at some point if it proves to be a long-term thing beyond just this 6-month pilot program. And more and more towns adopt similar partnerships or initiate similar partnerships, it could show that there could be some sort of lifestyle shift, right? You can very easily envision okay, I'm not taking my car to the train station anymore where it's just going to sit. I'll pay $2 each way to take Uber. That way my kid who's 16 in Jersey and has a learner's permit or is turning 17, whatever, senior year of high school, wants to drive to to school. That way my kid can get practice driving to school every day and like drive themselves home from soccer or debate or whatever it may be that they're doing after school. So this does show how lifestyles can easily shift as a result of a pilot program like this.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Priya Anand. She is the transportation reporter at BuzzFeed and is Priya's Ideas on Twitter. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, TNT's fan of the day is Miles Mundell on Twitter, who says, watching with Corona, not a Corona, but Corona, says the young lion of the house. Says, I watch it other times on my new iPhone 7, which I'm really, really liking. So there you go. There's the lion. Not quite as fierce as I expected, but
Looks canine-esque.
there we are all the way in the distance. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup. Post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and we're going to find it. All right, up next, we'll have a BDDO-DDoS. That's Becky's deep dive on distributed denial of service attacks with IoT.
Wow.
I'm sorry I even tried. But
That was
first,
good.
let's take a minute to thank Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. They are the sponsor of this episode. Hey, I think all of us sitting at this table, either virtually or in real life, have gone through the process of doing a mortgage. You get in the house, you forget all the pain that it took to get you there, basically. All that paperwork, all that stuff that you had to do to dig up in order to get there. It's not very fun. Well, with Rocket Mortgage, they're bringing the mortgage approval process into the 21st century. It's fast, powerful, and completely online. Rocket Mortgage has taken all the complicated, time-consuming parts of applying for a mortgage out of the equation. So, if you hate searching through stacks of old files and paperwork, well, you don't have to do that here. With Rocket Mortgage, you can easily share your bank statements and your pay stubs at the touch of a button, helping you get approved in minutes for a custom mortgage solution that's been tailored to your unique financial situation. And even better, with Rocket Mortgage, you can do all of this on your phone or your tablet. They make it super easy. It's a quick online process that you can manage from the convenience of your couch. So if you're looking to refinance your mortgage or buy a home, check out Rocket Mortgage today at quickenloans.com/TNT. That's quickenloans.com/TNT, equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030. And we thank Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans for their support.
All right, Becky. What do you got? A deep dive into BDDoS?
Whatever Jason said.
Maybe it's a BSH. Yeah, no. Just was really interested in following the story that you folks reported last week about Krebs on Security being taken down by a distributed denial of service attack. That was unlike any that we'd seen in the past. This was reported as having 1 terabit per second inflow rates and request rates that were crashing the system, and they have lots of redundancy provided to them by Akamai, but Akamai eventually had to come to Brian Krebs and say, hey, we can't handle this. The site was offline for a little bit. Google Shield stepped in and has created redundancy with all of their massive throughput and bandwidth. But what's really interesting is that prior to this terabit DDoS, one of the largest distributed denial of service attack bit rates was, I think, 350 to 400. Those were the two highest reports that I'd seen in a sort of a wired encapsulation, sort of a wiki on DDoSs. And so that we increased by that magnitude that fast. The realization is that this is from Internet of Things devices. I saw it reported anywhere from 150,000 to 1 million different Internet of Things devices. They think it's specifically a lot of CCTV cameras, but it could be anything from legacy thermostats that are connected to the internet, or they really don't know because they're from so many different IP addresses. But what was really interesting as I was thinking about this problem. Is this a consumer story? Is this something we need to be telling people to secure their Internet of Things devices? And realized there's not a lot you can do as the owner of these devices to secure them. These are mostly software updates and firmware pushes that would need to come from the manufacturers to these devices. I think is that this is not a consumer problem. This is really an issue that these companies are going to have to deal with. And it makes you realize, I don't want to be buying some fly-by-night hardware that connects to the internet where the company may not be supporting it down the line. These devices have such long life times because they're appliances. They're not gadgets that we're updating every 2 or 3 years. And this is going to be a problem that continues. The question I have for you guys, when you think about distributed denial of service attacks, it's not the end of the world. Really, we're talking about probably the most severe things that have happened. You remember when the government and media sites in Georgia and Estonia were taken offline back in 2007. You had Iran was accused of conducting a DDoS against Bank of America when it was presumed retaliation for economic sanctions. There was a DDoS against websites for banks in Greece and Sweden. But remember, these aren't their systems. These are their websites. So it's not like this is taking down massive infrastructure. But do you think this is something that, when I think about DDoS, I guess I'm trying to figure out if I should pitch this as a GMA story. I know they would love it, but I want to be responsible and not make it a bigger deal than it is. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, my thought about the Krebs story was that it was really a way of silencing him. That was what I found so disturbing about it. He had this website. He writes about security. He made someone mad. They took it down, and he couldn't afford to keep it up. And so it's for me, this story is about journalism and bloggers and being able to, if you're having someone host your own site and then that host your site for you and someone says, hey, you're doing a great job, but it's costing us a lot of time and money and we can't do it anymore and we're sorry. So for me, I think that was interesting. When you talk about Internet of Things, this being the way this zombie, botnet of Internet of Things, it really it's no different than people who, connect to the internet without thinking about security, without doing their security updates, and that's why that's why Windows that's why they had to keep updating. That's why they had to force people to update. Otherwise it's just I have this machine that's running XP and I haven't gotten security updates since 2006. And so, I think that most people don't really know that they could be part of a botnet. They still don't. So I think that it is good for the GMA audience.
The source code for this, Megan, has been published over the weekend. Mm-hmm. So that entire botnet is now up for grabs.
Yeah.
I mean, what is the implication for the general consumer, that they might be victim of a DDoS attack? I think less likely from a consumer standpoint, but I think the fear, the challenge as we move more into IoT homes, homes with smart devices and all this stuff kind of connecting to the internet through a single hub and all that kind of stuff is, do people know how to keep themselves protected from becoming part of somebody else's problem? From their little devices being the thing that takes down a Krebs down the line, or do they even have the ability to do that?
Not really.
I don't think that people really have a whole lot of choice in securing that stuff right now. It really does come down to the companies that are making these devices understanding the importance of this. And a big challenge for that right now is that a lot of these devices that are already out there weren't created with that in mind, and updating them is going to be an insane challenge, if not next to impossible to get them all updated. So that's a genie that's been let out of the bottle. It's hard to get it back in,
Steve Gibson said the only way you could know if you were compromised was if you knew sort of roughly what your upstream traffic was, say, on a monthly basis, and then you saw a huge uptick in that another month. But who's tracking their cumulative upstream traffic?
Steve Gibson is, but
right.
Yeah, the general person is not.
No, yeah, and my only thinking of doing this story more at a global level would be to pressure those IoT makers to really take security more seriously and be rigorous on their security updates.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
I
I
don't
would
know.
talk to those people.
Torn.
Like, talk to the IoT, the people making these devices. What can people do? Because I think what happens so often is like we have people saying like, beware of Internet of Things, beware of all of your stuff, be very afraid. But then there's nothing that a consumer can do. No one's saying like, here are the 3 steps you need to take to keep yourself safe. It's just like there's the, yes, be very afraid, and then they're like, well, what can we do? Nothing? Okay.
Stay very far away from your Samsung washing machine. That's what you can do. That's it.
At the very least, it might explode on you. Not just saying that there was actually a story of a Samsung washing machine exploding.
It's a thing now.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. I should mention that back in May, the Machine-to-Machine Intelligence Corporation, which is a supplier of IoT applications and technologies, actually won a contract with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate with basically a development contract around creating next generation super secure IoT security suites for these devices that manufacturers are making. So their mind is there, and there's certainly things are being put into place. But again, there's a lot of these devices already out there, and it's going to take a while for this to kind of proliferate to any meaningful way. So yeah, it's a big challenge. It's strange that such an oversight seems to have happened. I don't know.
Shocking when there's no profit associated with keeping them secure. I just don't know how that happened.
Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah.
Well, Becky, I want to see you break this wide open. I want to see
I'm going to do it.
Tear it
I'm going
apart.
to go after those IoT security teams.
I'm trying to think of what the Julia Roberts movie was, where the woman that broke open it was.
Erin Brockovich.
Yes, I want you
I'm
to
her.
be the Erin Brockovich of IoT botnets.
That's right. That's my new tagline. Ooh, I like it.
Always
you.
a pleasure.
Yes,
Thank
thanks
you
so much
for coming on.
Yeah.
So fun to be on the show. You guys are doing such a great job. I watch, I listen, and I really enjoy it.
Thank you. Where can people follow all the awesome things that you're doing?
Look, do a girl a solid. Go to the Twitter and find @BWorley. There she is. You want to be following @BWorley. It is a party on that Twitter account of consumer tech news. You want to be in that party.
I do. I want to go right now.
Well, we're already there. Thankfully, Brian, our technical director, is showing us your entire feed. We're going to go from top to bottom all the way to your very first tweet.
That's exciting.
And we're going to read every single one on the show. No, we're not going to do that, but you can if you go to Becky's Twitter feed @BWorley. Thank you,
guys.
Becky.
Thanks for
Pleasure.
coming on.
We'll talk to you soon. TNT records live every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. UTC at twit.tv/live. Be part of the show by emailing us, tnt@twit.tv. Leave us a short voicemail at 260-TNT-SHOW. And find us on Twitter. We're at Tech News Today TV.
Find all the ways to subscribe to our show at twit.tv/TNT. And you can tweet at me. I'm at Megan Morrone. And Twit is now on the Amazon Echo Flash Briefing. You can get updates every single day on the latest tech news from Leo and Jason and myself. To hear Twit's Flash Briefing, you have to have an Amazon Echo or an Echo Dot. Go to your settings in the Alexa app, search for Twit, and subscribe. Put it on the top of your Flash Briefing. Make it the first thing that you hear every morning. It's the first thing I hear every morning. It is a great way to start your morning.
Yes, you should do that, you Echo users. I don't have an Echo, but if I did, I'd do that. I'm at Jason Howell on Twitter. Thanks to our technical director, Brian. Thanks to Burke. Thanks to Kevin. And thanks to you for talking tech with us today. We'll see you all tomorrow. Bye, everyone. Pow. If you were there.
Are you there? I hear her.
We're back.